All right, hey everyone, welcome back to Creator Cafe. I'm actually joined here with Brandon James Greer, and it's actually a third episode, so pretty excited. He's a pixel artist, trying something different. Back when I launched Creator Cafe, I was really thinking just photographers and models for the show because that's my expertise area. But I decided I want to branch out to other creators as well, and we're lucky to have Brandon here. And do you want to give us some background about what you do and your
Yeah, so I've been making pixel art for about 5 years now, and then just recently, about 7 months ago, I started a YouTube channel for it because I kind of always enjoyed watching, like art tutorials and time lapse videos and stuff like that. And I just wanted to kind of like do something like that, but with a real focus on the technical approach behind pixel art, so that other pixel artists can appreciate, watching a nice video as well.
That's cool. And then I really you your videos are really like educational to me because I've been watching for quite some time now. And I feel like other creators aside from, pixel artists, like even like me, I'm a photographer. I feel like we can all learn from your creative process, like how you like pick apart different aspects of your world and like apply that to your
Yeah,
artwork.
yes, yeah. Like I say that there's like a focus on the pixel art too, but a lot of that stuff kind of transcends, whatever medium you're working in. If it was just a hand drawn illustration, or I guess even photography, maybe like with composition and stuff like that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you can kind of there's a lot of generic stuff to talk about as well, just with putting a piece of art together in general. So
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, so I like hitting
Also,
on that as well.
how long have you been making videos? Because I go on there, I realize you have a new channel, right?
Yeah,
And then the quality is insane, dude. Like,
yeah. I have only been making the videos for 7 months.
mhm.
Uh, I I took a lot of time before I posted the first set of them to like kind of get
Okay,
them in a good spot.
yeah.
So like the very first video that I made, I probably made it like two or three times.
Oh, really?
Meaning like not from scratch, but like I had the
Uh-huh.
materials and
Right.
like the recordings and stuff, and just figuring out like how to piece it together and like what the rhythms of a video even were, that kind of stuff. Um, so yeah, I was probably working on them for like 2 months before I actually started the channel, because I
Okay.
wanted to have a bit of time to like be bad at it in private and then post it. And I
Right.
mean, even the old ones now, like when you look at your older stuff, even if it's a couple months old, you're like, I could have done
Yeah.
something better there. But that's what it's about. You never know until you get better, like what can be done, right? So
Yeah, I was
yeah,
like, does he
but
have
I
an
appreciate
editor or
that though. Yeah,
something? Like,
yeah,
and I thought it was cool, like, because people they only see like the finished product, right? But then what they don't see is behind the scenes. You just mentioned like you spent 2 months leading up to that point before you launched your YouTube videos.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
think,
I didn't want to just like jump into it. Like when I did like the very first cut or whatever, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. But I kind of knew, like, because I've been making art for so long, I'm like, there's going to be like, I'm going to get better at this.
right.
And so I'm going to try making other kinds of videos first, and then, kind of have a batch of them before you post, not just like, well, there's one that took me a month to make, and let's start the channel with that one video and hope people,
I
whatever
think
I
it
wanted
was
to.
it the canvas size one. I
That's
think.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Or
Because
just
that's
like,
I
yeah,
literally I
sizing.
searched that up and that was what I was looking for too.
I
So like,
know, yeah, and so that's part of it too. Is like, because I've been in it so long, I get a lot of questions from aspiring pixel artists or whatever. So I kind of like had all these ideas of the types of things that people are usually looking for,
right.
and things that I looked for as well when I was starting. So that initial batch was just sort of me like thinking about addressing those sorts of questions. Like everyone's always asking about what canvas size is this picture that you post, and so just like, here's how I kind of decide like, yeah, a general range of what I like to make my stuff at.
Yeah, it's like you just predicted like, oh, people are gonna ask this, so then I'm gonna tell them, oh, here's what you need to do for that.
Yeah, yeah, you get a lot of the same questions, and they're good questions too. I mean, that's
Right.
all the
Definitely.
kind of fundamental stuff. Like if you're doing a hand drawn illustration, it's like, oh well, you can take out a piece of paper. If you're going to make pixel art, you can't do that. Like you have to decide like, what even is my size going to be, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And if you get it wrong, you can't just like drag it like it's a vector image. You're just like, well, I got to start from scratch or try to fill out, the rest
Yeah.
of the area, whatever. So Yeah, so
It's
you've
so
been trying pixel art as well a little bit, or like
yeah.
where
Do
you
you
at
want
with
a little
that?
bit of my background on that?
Yeah.
So for me back in, oh man, that was a while ago. Probably fifth grade. We're going back to fifth grade now. So um, I'm not sure if you're familiar with like the old Pokemon games. But you know those sprites.
Yeah, yeah.
So back in that era, there was a huge community on YouTube about like mixing the sprites together, like
Okay.
taking the sprites and
Like
then taking parts of them. You know, like putting
a
like
mashup, like making your
yeah, yeah,
own Pokemon out of other monster parts.
yeah,
Like,
pretty
yeah,
much.
yeah.
So that was a huge thing back then, and like that was
Okay.
kind of how I got started into that. You know, because I would
Uh,
just like mash up different,
yeah.
pixelated
Was that more
sprites.
about like the lore of it too? Like you'd be like, oh, I mixed these two Pokemon and like these are its new abilities based on like the two originals it was made from, or was just about messing around with the pixel art?
Honestly, I just liked creating them. Like
Yeah.
okay, this looks cool. This might be a cool concept.
Yeah. And then it gives you a bit of a template as well because you have that existing art to kind of chop
Right?
up, I guess,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
And then later on, I would branch off into like I started. I think in middle school, I tried making like a video game in middle school,
Really?
and
Yeah.
then I needed pixel art, right? So then yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's how I started doing like actual from scratch.
Oh, cool. Was it
Yeah.
something inspired by Pokemon as well, or?
I think it was completely different. It looked pretty bad too,
Oh, okay, well,
but
yeah. You have to start
hey,
somewhere.
yeah, just yeah, you got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, yeah. Do you still have that game, or it was like a project in
I
school?
do.
Yeah,
I found it recently and I saved it to my MacBook.
yeah, yeah. You need to do the HD remake of that now. If you're a little bit better at pixel art, just like reskin everything.
Yeah, honestly, I was thinking about that.
Yeah,
What about you? Like, what's your background on pixel art? Like, how did you get into it?
I kind of
I reckon that
started from
today,
like
that's why.
yeah. I haven't covered that. I want to do a video about that someday. I think like just sort of my journey in pixel art.
Right.
But the short story is like I sort of started in graphic design
Oh, okay.
as a hobby as well. But I took some courses at a local college for just graphic design programs like Photoshop, Illustrator, and then some general basics of design. And so I just really enjoyed like making posters and like little vector graphics and stuff like that. And
That's cool.
then in one of the posters I was making, it had kind of like a background that was supposed to look like Lego,
Oh,
and
huh.
I was thinking about how to do the Lego, and so I was in Adobe Illustrator making like rectangles and little like cityscape out of these blocks, and it just kind of reminded me of pixel art, which is a style that I've always liked, from games from childhood or whatever. And I think that was kind of what sparked it. It didn't feel as direct as like, oh hey, I like this Lego stuff, let's try pixel art, but it was all around that time, and that was sort of how I got into it. I just started trying making sprites and just kind of never stopped since then.
To this day, he continues to
Yeah,
make
yeah,
it.
but I think if I had to trace it to one thing, it was that idea of trying to make a poster, a graphic design kind of thing that looked like Lego. That sort of sparked my interest.
That's cool. Also, it's
Yeah.
so interesting because pixel art, it's so simple but so complex at the same time. Because
Hmm.
it's just one square, but then that one square can have like tons of implications and
Yeah,
big
especially when
picture.
like when you're working in that small scale, and if you have a certain square in a certain spot or you don't, it can literally make or break the readability of that design.
Right.
Like that's what I love. Like to me, it just feels sort of like a sort of mental puzzle that you're playing, or like those games where you like shift the little squares
Oh,
around on the thing.
yeah.
It's sort of like that where you're just like trying the different combinations, and you're like this works and this doesn't, and this makes it look like it has a little bit of an extra detail that shouldn't be there or should be there, that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
I love that. I love sort of that. I don't know. I find that really like mentally engaging to mess around with the placement.
Yeah, how do you come up with your ideas too? Like as you're making your artwork, because I saw your Nano Park City, that
Yeah.
recent video that you made, and then you started with a blank page, and then all of a sudden you have a whole city.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's sort of just like oh, sorry, it's my cat here. Yeah, they when we close the door, like we can leave the door open, and they don't care at all about the office or whatever. And as soon as you close the door, they're like, "Hey, how come we can't go in there? We didn't want to, but now that's closed, we can't." Um, but yeah, with a piece like that, like so, I start with the blank page, and then it's just sort of like I don't know. I fill it out with stuff that I like to see. Like I just if it's like a cityscape like that or like a little town or whatever. Like I like buildings and like little details on them, pipes and stuff like that. Kind of like futuristic look.
Hmm.
So I guess I have kind of like a mental library that I've stored up of just observing stuff like that in shows and movies, like little
That's
details
cool.
on buildings. Like so I guess it's about having an appreciation for that sort of stuff, and then you just kind of can draw from that mental bank. Um, if I were trying to do like some kind of a fantasy town or something, I'd probably have a harder time because I don't have as much of a mental library for that sort of stuff. Be like, oh, I guess there's like a wall made out of wood, and there's I don't know, like an arch or something. I don't know. That's not like my. Oh, geez, she's really tangling up on my. Sorry. Yeah, I think you. Yeah, hopefully you get what I mean, though. Yeah.
Yeah. So you observe through like different things that you've seen like in movies or like real world probably, and then you take that observation and you translate it basically into your
Yeah, yeah,
artwork.
and it's not as I wouldn't say it's as direct as like watching something and being like, "Oh, I'm going to steal that for later." It's just sort of like
Oh,
it seeps
right.
into your mind as like these are the sorts of things that resonate with me when
And
I
then it
think
twists a
about a
little bit, right?
setting.
And then like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. So with like the Nano Park City one, it's really fun and colorful kind of city. So it all goes through that lens eventually too.
There's like a cattail going around your face as
I know. She takes like an hour to settle down, so for the rest of the yeah.
Oh yeah,
And
where
then
did
too, I
you?
mean, that's another good point too. Is like one of the details you might see in a lot of my pieces too are two little black cats,
Oh
and
really?
that's because yeah, yeah. So
I don't know if
they
I've noticed.
yeah
I don't know.
some of the other like not every single piece, but some of the
Mhm.
larger like sort of side view type of illustrations put little cats in there. Again, that's just like a real life kind of draw from my cats, right? So
Yeah. Where did your mascot come from then? For everyone
so
that doesn't know, Brandon has a mascot. It's like a little monkey, and it's made out of like a. What's the canvas size on that? It's a small one, right?
it is small. Yeah, I think it's like 12 pixels tall and like maybe 20 or so wide, something like that. But yeah, it's pretty
I'll
small.
put it on the screen. If you're watching the visual version of this, I'll put it on the screen. But yeah, how did you come up with that mascot?
So that actually goes way back to when I was in those graphic design classes. We had to create I forget what they called it. Like we just had to make like a personal logo for a design project. And so this was, I think, in my Adobe Illustrator course. And uh, I decided to do like a chimpanzee face vector graphic.
Hmm.
And I can show you probably. I have, maybe I can screen share. Oh, sorry, it's not enabled, it looks like.
Oh,
Yeah, that's okay. I can send it to you after you can pop it into the video or something, right?
yeah, sure. I'll do that.
Yeah.
I'll pop it in.
Anyway, so yeah, so it was like a vector image of a chimpanzee face, and I sort of worked my initials into it, BJG. Like the eyes kind of created a B, and then the nose was like a J, and then the G was the mouth.
Into the monkey.
Yeah, into the vector logo. So that was how I like made it kind of personal, not just like a random vector illustration of a chimpanzee.
Right.
Um, and then I used that for like a couple years because I was really proud of it. So even when I was getting more into pixel art and I was just kind of posting pixel art exclusively, I just had this weird chimpanzee vector logo as my
Like
avatar or
profile.
whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then I don't know, it's just maybe a year or a little more than that ago, I decided like I got to update this thing and make it into pixel art. So I basically took like the essence of what that was and then created it into the pixel art
That's cool.
little monkey. Yeah, yeah. I have a post on my Instagram of like when I made that change, And if you swipe over on the post, there's like all the little iterations of me going from the vector one to the final pixel
Oh, I gotta
version.
check that out later.
Yeah. So
Kind of curious now.
it's kind of neat to see just like uh, the different states of like going from one to the other and
That's
trying to
cool.
find the right combination, because that was again like I wanted to do it in a really small scale, just so that when you're looking at it from a distance, it clearly looks like pixel art.
Right.
Oh boy. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
Just, animals are just like they have no appreciation for what's going on. Just like
We have
just
dogs here.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Will they visit the podcast as well, or
You know what? I'll bring Fuzzy on one of these.
yeah, you should.
All right. Also, what inspires you the most when you're creating? Do you have inspiration like from another artist or like from other sources? Like what inspires you?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of things. Certainly, other artists help. Just TV shows and movies that I enjoy. Um, like thinking about and playing retro games and stuff is a really big inspiration too. Just because I like trying to capture that sort of nostalgic feeling of
Right.
old video games. So I think that's probably the main one, is like thinking about retro games and trying to do something that evokes that kind of thing. But it's my own vision, right? So
Right. And I've noticed like you get your canvas sizes and palettes from like retro games as well.
yeah, I'll do that as well. Just like more arbitrary than anything, just to have some kind of frame of reference. Like if the original Nintendo is a certain size, like I might as well adopt that and see what I can do within that same space, because we're familiar with what those games look like with those
Right.
restrictions. So by adopting similar restrictions, like I maybe should end up with something that could pass as one of those, right?
Yeah, it's
Or sort of take that, but like put a bit of a spin on it too, like using the Game Boy canvas size, but using more colors or something like that. So you kind of mix and match them in different ways. Yeah.
it's like a modern retro then, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
is
Yeah,
that
because we,
is that
yeah,
a
there.
word? Like can I use those two words together?
I think so. Yeah, it's sort of
Modern
like,
retro? Because doesn't that mean like new old or something?
yeah. I think it makes sense. It's sort of it's the balance, right? Because we,
Yeah.
a lot of like like a pixel art purist idea might be to adhere very strictly to the restrictions that they had for
Mm,
those
right.
systems. Like you got to use certain size of tiles and color restrictions per sprite and that kind of stuff. Or you can kind of take that and mix and match to give it that updated kind of flavor, that modern touch to it. Um,
Have you ever
that
thought
comes in.
about like um doing a bigger canvas size? Because I noticed you stick to like the retro kind of resolutions. Have you
Yeah,
thought
that's
about
right.
those insane ones that are like I don't know, hundreds by hundreds of
Yeah, they'll be like, upwards of like, I get, well, really anything, but like 500 to 1,000
yeah.
pixels is quite large, especially for me. And the ones that I've seen that pull it off the best are really like illustrated type of pixel art, like where you can tell that it was kind of like drawn by hand, maybe with
Right.
a
Mhm.
tablet or something like that. That's not quite where my skill set's at, so that's something I would certainly need to work up to. But I love looking at that kind of art. I just feel like to go to that size uh would not mix with what I know to how to do best.
Right.
So yeah, but it's
Might be
it's
cool to
something that
try,
I should try. I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah. Or even just like using a larger canvas size, but filling it out with the same kind of scale stuff that I make. You could make a larger map or something like that
Right.
with the same size of details, but there's just more of it, I guess.
Yeah, that makes
Could be
sense.
kind of a cool thing. Yeah.
Also, you use a trackpad of all things.
Yeah.
I mean, so do I, but still, like,
I know, yeah, that's why I can't do the large canvas, because if I swipe, I can't swipe all the way across 1,000
you're
pixels.
like, you'll be here and you need to go
Yeah.
more, but then you can't because
Yeah, that's why I'm limited. That's what I'll say. Yeah. Yeah,
how?
like I said in that video though, that just kind of became like, because I just have my laptop, so like I enjoy more working, being able to like work in different like places than I do to just be stationed at a desk with like all the best equipment or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. Like um, what are your thoughts about that? Like, people like, do you think it'll be beneficial for people to like, take their work and then go to different environments, trying that out and like different
I think so.
atmospheres?
Yeah. I think if that's what works for you, like for me, I'm not the kind of person who like goes and works like in a coffee shop or whatever. Like that's sort of a
Right, right.
romantic idea that I would have. But the times that I've tried it, I've been way too like self-conscious and just like nobody look at what I'm
Oh,
doing or
because
whatever.
like people might
Yeah.
look over and then
Yeah, just like who's this guy making little monkeys out of squares? Like what? But certainly, like within just the comfort, of my home. Like if I'm working on the bed or in the office or on the couch or the kitchen, whatever it is, I find that just changing the location kind of refreshes your mind a little bit or
right,
puts you in a different mindset. And so I think that helps the art for sure, versus just being stationed in one place. But then also like the tools that you would have to make the art would also influence how it's made, right? If I
true.
had a tablet and I was doing stuff kind of hand drawn, it would have a different look. You'd have to take a different approach. So it's just kind of like finding what works for you, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Also, I'm sure like some days you probably some days do you have like less motivation, like or less creativity, do you feel like some days?
Yeah. Yeah. There's some days I just don't, I just don't work on anything. I kind of know like you can sort of feel it, I guess, like just
Yeah,
like, I'm not sure I'm in that space right now. Or if I just finished something else, I might have like a little bit of a lull period where I'm thinking about the next thing, but I'm not quite
right.
ready to execute yet. So yeah, I'll just like, I'm not really hard on myself with like, oh, you got to be at this every day or whatever. Like it's not going to work if you're not ready for it to. It's
Right.
like when you're trying to study for a test or something, and you're just like trying to read a textbook
You have to
and you read
cram
the
it
full
in all
paragraph.
at
Yeah, yeah. And then after you
once.
finish reading, you're like, did I even absorb that? Like
Right.
it's not worth that studying at that time.
Yeah, so would your advice to people then be like, make sure that you're still refreshed and not like overworking, or like what would you say about that?
Yeah, I guess that's part of it, like not pushing yourself too much. I take breaks quite frequently. Like I'll work on stuff maybe for like an hour and then stop. I don't think it's not usually that I get bored. I'm just like ready to do something else. Like
Yeah.
I don't know if that's like a ADD kind of thing or whatever, but just I break it up a lot basically, as I'm saying. Like work for an hour, watch some YouTube videos,
Yeah.
work again, watch a show, whatever it is.
So like a healthy balance basically, right? Of like,
Yeah, yeah, I guess so.
balancing your creativity and also, like everything else and like
Yeah,
yeah.
I kind of weigh it against like if I get to a certain checkpoint, like if I was making a scene and it had like a building or a character or something, once I finish that one piece and I'm not ready to like start from the ground up to do the next one, I'm like, wow, that's a good checkpoint. Like let's come back to
Yeah.
this later. Yeah. And I always find too, like when you stop and then you come back, like it's so much easier to see things that you could be doing differently.
Right.
So
That's
you
cool.
see
Yeah.
what you made at your checkpoint last time and we're like, oh, okay, now I can spot like that maybe was the wrong choice or whatever. So constantly having like a fresh view of it definitely helps
Right.
the improvement.
That's I feel like the same kind of similar thing happens with me in like photography because when like I'm editing a photo and then I might look back later, and realize like, yeah, I don't actually like how that aspect looks like what I did last time, and I might tweak a little bit.
Right. Yeah. How do you, so when it comes to photography, like, cause there's a lot more probably that goes into like maybe organizing a shoot or something, or do you kind of go more spontaneous? Like, oh, I'm just going to go out and take photos, or do you do like, arrange like models and that kind of stuff?
I feel like it varies, like there's different like usually I'll probably like plan it with someone like, hey, do you want to go on like this day or something? Not recently though because quarantine and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, or other times, I might be like, I might see like if anyone just wants to like go real quick, around the just around town.
Yep.
But Yeah, there's a lot of things that go into it. I think what some of the parallels though, just having an idea in your mind of like a kind of concept that you want to create or in the photo you want to take, and then but for me though, it's like it sounds like in your mind it sounds like really cool, but then translating it into when you're actually doing it, and doing the creating.
Yeah.
I don't. Sometimes I feel like it doesn't translate
I
completely like how
know.
I
Yeah.
imagined it.
Do you like, can you kind of like picture what you want it to look like if you're thinking about what your photo is going to be? Do you have it in your mind, or is it just kind of like this sort of nebulous, like floating idea?
Um, I have an idea of like in my mind, but other times it's more spontaneous. I'm like, oh, you know what? Let's try this because I might see something out of the corner of my eye, like, oh, that might be an interesting background, or like a prop or something. So then at that point, then I might just come up with something real quick and then try it out and like see how
Yeah.
that works.
Yeah. And
Like,
then when you're editing, be like, oh, that wasn't that wasn't quite what I was going for.
yeah,
Or although, yeah, I don't know. Do you find like sometimes, maybe this is another parallel, but sometimes when I'm working on something, like I'll be like, ooh, this is kind of bad. But the more you kind of like carve away at it and like, get the right colors in there and this and that, you can kind of shape it into something. And you're like, oh, okay, I kind of surprised myself with that. So
yeah,
with photography, like once you have the photo, there must be a lot that can be done in the post processing phase.
right, yeah,
I'm not talking about like, oh, I'm going to Photoshop it to make it look good or whatever, but just like, getting the right color
lighting,
cast and
color
yeah,
grading, yeah, that
contrast, all whatever it is. Yeah.
yeah. I think there's actually I just thought of this right now. I think there's a really distinct parallel between like photo editing and pixel art because you know how you have your line work first.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the raw photo straight from the camera. It's
Right.
like it's kind of like the base, and then
Yeah.
when you open up, for me it's Lightroom, to edit photos. But when you begin like editing, then you start going through the initial like the brightness or like the lighting, adjusting that, and that could be like your initial colors, and then color grading for photos would probably be like when you're doing your shading on pixel art.
Right. Yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah. Cause yeah, like I think I say this in every single video that I make that has like line work first and then shading and then color. But like once, like if I have really good line work, I'm like, I know that this is going to work out if I enjoy it just looking at the line work, because it's only probably going to get better once I am able to add more definition with the shading and the colors and everything,
Right.
right? So yeah, it must be the same thing. Like if you have a really well composed photo, just totally like raw colors
Yeah.
or whatever, you'd be
It's like
like, I
something that
can,
like, oh, that one's gonna be good right after I
yeah,
apply
yeah,
this. Like you can
I can
picture
already
it,
see
the
it.
final
Yeah,
product. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But then other times it's kind of like, maybe, like we'll see,
I know. Yeah, sometimes I'll feel that I'm like overworking something a little bit, and so you have to find that line of like, what's the right touch for this? Like, just because you can add all these extra flourishes doesn't mean you should. Like, what's the
Right.
right balance? So
Yeah. So I think the big one as like for any creator then is balance, right?
yeah, yeah,
Whether that's
absolutely.
in your workflow or whether that's in like your actual creating process, I think
Yeah,
that's probably a really important thing to
yeah.
take note of.
And that's what I love about pixel art too, because it's sort of built up like with this fundamental idea of restrictions in place already. Certainly, that's something that exists with other types of art, but I think pixel artists have a really good handle, even from their earliest attempts of like, oh, I really have to scale back on the amount of colors that I use. I got to make sure I'm using the right space.
Right.
So that actually really helped me like develop into an artist, was just being placed in a box, with like, oh, these are the only tools that I have to work with. So here's
Mhm.
what I can make. If you give me a sheet of paper and like a 100 pack of markers, I'm like, I don't know, this is so much. I can't even draw. I don't know what to do. Like you could take it in so many directions. But if you say
Right.
like, here's a 16 by 16 area and you got two colors, make a face or whatever. Like, okay, I can try to
Yeah.
like arrange them in the right way. Yeah.
And then from there, if you want to, and then you can expand it, to larger canvas size, more colors, on the palette.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why we say like people are always curious about where to start, and I think scaling back, like putting a lot of restrictions on yourself early on really helps develop those skills, because then once you open it up to uh, more allowances, you kind of have a better idea of how to use those. So if you did work for a few months just using 2 colors, 3 colors, or 4 colors, and then all of a sudden you open it up to like 10, you can maybe figure out like what's the best way to use these.
Right.
Same thing with canvas size too. If you're doing stuff in a really small space and then open up to larger, you'll have a better idea about like what can actually go into that space.
Right. And also, as far as like equipment too, because I already talked about this in the last episode with Orange, and we're saying like it doesn't really matter as much equipment wise as and then but it does more for like your creativity, and like skill, I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah, there's people that like make pixel art in Microsoft Excel, right?
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
can you color those boxes? I didn't
Yeah,
know.
you just fill you make it into a square grid of cells, and then yeah, you could do the fill colors, right? So yeah, you can basically, like, it's really easy to make the idea of pixel art. Certainly, like, doing it in Excel is kind of like a novelty idea, and probably isn't the fastest way to go about it. But
It
like
works.
it,
I mean,
yeah, and it
if you
might
can
change
make
your
something
creative
out of
approach
that,
too.
then that's cool too.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but then there's like there's apps you can get on your phone where you're just kind of drawing on there, um, or anything that's web based or whatever. So
Oh, I've got a story for you about that actually. So,
yeah,
for the longest time, because you know how we have we both have MacBooks. So, I use this application called Paintbrush. It's the
okay.
most basic. There's no layers. There's no opacity. It's just like,
Is it like MS Paint on the
is it?
Mac, or it's like MS Paint?
I guess, yeah, because like we didn't because that's for Windows and we have Apple, right?
Yeah.
So I needed to find a different one, and so I found this one, and it had the most basic tools and everything, and I've used that for years,
Really? Wow.
years.
Oh man.
And
Yeah.
then,
Like.
like last month, I got Ace Bright, so now there's
Oh,
layers, and I
cool.
was
Yeah.
blown away. I was
Yeah. Certainly. Like, really, really helps. Just to have layers at all is a big thing. I would think. Yeah.
yeah,
I'm
definitely.
always like, I like it just to like copy the one that you're working on, so that you can kind of make changes, but then you still have the other one there,
Right.
rather than having to go like undo, 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 undo. Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering how you get like each individual step when you showcase like a tutorial or something.
Oh, you mean like when I post like the final art and it shows everything going real quick
Yeah, like you
or
have
whatever? Yeah.
the lines, and then the
Yeah, those are oh yeah, like for the tutorials and stuff. Yeah, those are all different layers, and then I just play it back as an animation.
oh,
So
okay,
like when I'm making stuff, like I've gotten in the habit of just creating or duplicating my layers to make the changes so that I still have a preserved version of the original stuff. But then I liked being able to play back those layers as like an animated time lapse of sorts. So I'm just really in the habit now of like, I'm always copying my layers so that I can do that kind of thing. I think it's a nice like presentational thing.
yeah,
um yeah, and then for the like more tutorial kind of stuff, if there's things like flying on the screen and appearing and whatever, yeah, it's all just its own layers. And like it's basically like making a pixel art animation,
right.
just my voice is over it too, and you gotta kind of like sync it
You gotta
up to
time
that,
it
right?
right because
Yeah, yeah, that's the
yeah.
hard part. Yeah.
Do you, is it your voice to the art, or is it your art to the voice?
Wait, what would it be? I the voice is the thing that matters the most. Like
I
I
mean,
know
as
I
far as
know what
like,
all the.
do you match? Do you talk and then does the art match? The voice. Does it go along with that, or does it?
That's right. Yeah,
Does your voice go with
yeah.
that?
Or like if I'm doing a tutorial, yeah,
Hmm.
like, and I have all of my assets and I'm trying to explain something and it appears and then like it does an animation, I'll record that first and then I'll sync up those animations to what I'm saying. If it's a time lapse, I'll obviously like the footage is whatever the footage is, so
Right.
I'll just be talking over that. Um, but yeah, like syncing the tutorials to my voice is like can be tricky. But what like usually the hardest part is just having all the assets and like imagining what's going to be on screen, you know,
Like the
and what's the
final product.
best. Yeah, like what's really the best visual sort of graphic that explains what I'm trying to talk about, you know?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Also, what advice would you give people like that want to start creating on YouTube as well?
Um, I'm not sure. I've heard like it really helps to like obviously you have to have that knowledge for yourself. Maybe if you're going to be try like teaching on YouTube, but
Right.
above that, like you could really make any types of videos. I guess if you're just someone who creates something, I think there's a lot of value in just sharing like what your approach was, like what you had in mind, even if it's
Yeah.
something you know the final product doesn't necessarily have to be the best in the world or like worthy of you know people watching, but I think there's a lot of value in just someone explaining like, hey, here's the idea that I had,
Hmm.
here's kind of what I was doing, and this is what I was thinking. There's a lot more to it than just looking at a final product and like not knowing the story behind it, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, now think about it because the whole process is like the really cool part, because then you can see the inner workings of like, oh, this is why I did that, and like
Yeah, and I think that's
everything
a
like
lot more fun. Like I think it's more fun to follow someone on that journey to whatever that final product is than to just like be scrolling through Instagram and see like you know some amazing illustration, which
that. Right.
that's great as well, obviously. But
I
like
guess there's less
to have that stuff,
appreciation.
yeah, you get
Yeah.
the appreciation because you were there like for the along for the ride, and you kind of were like with in this person's head a little bit, you know, if they're
Yeah, you see
sharing
the
like
ups and
what.
the downs and like everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
yeah, people have commented that before too, which I was surprised about. Of like there were a couple times like in time lapses or whatever where I'm just like, oh, and here's the thing I tried and it didn't work out, so I had to delete that
Uh,
or whatever. And I was not sure if I was supposed to like leave that kind of stuff in the video or take it out because I'm like, well,
mm.
it's really just wasting time if I spend 5 minutes being like, oh, here's the thing I was making, and that amounts to nothing. So, but leaving that kind of stuff in, people are like, oh, hey, like that's really cool that you left that in because you know everyone struggles. So
Right.
you shouldn't have this image like you got it perfect the first time. You know, there's a lot of value in addressing this was wrong and here's why it was wrong and here's what I did to correct it. Like that's almost more valuable than the final illustration or whatever, right?
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. Speaking of the process, you ready to share what we thought of for our magical Nintendo
Oh,
Switch?
sure, yeah. By
I'm
the
going to
way,
give
thanks
everyone a
for.
little bit of a background about what we did. So basically, guys, I reached out to Brandon. I asked him, "Hey, I got an idea for this little creation exercise that we could do." So I put a bunch of nouns and a few adjectives. Right, that was your suggestion for
Yeah,
the adjectives. I put those into a random item picker, and then whatever came out, we had to draw that and then bring it to the show, and then we're going to reveal it to each other for the first time. So
yeah.
we
Thank
ended
you
up
for
with
doing that. By the way, I think that's really cool that you had that idea. Is that something that you're like? Is that going to be like a mainstay of the podcast? Like whoever you're talking to, you're going to match their artistic style or something? Or I guess in
oh
this case, like because you dabble, you know, in pixel art and that it was fitting or what?
yeah, it was mainly the second thing that you said. It was the main reason, but that's
Yeah,
actually an interesting idea too, huh?
yeah, you should. I don't know if you're gonna like have like musicians or something on, like, hey, let's both make a song
Oh,
and
imagine
then
if I was
share it.
a singer or something.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't sing.
I think that would be kind of fun, like to have you like somebody who would just
That
like
would be that. Yeah, that would be
reach out to the creators and be like, let me see like what we both do and kind of
yeah,
whatever. Yeah,
that'd be cool.
yeah.
All right, so I feel like yours is gonna be really cool. So
I yeah
maybe I'll
I
go first, so then it doesn't it doesn't look as bad.
sure, yeah, whatever you like.
Hey, my forte is in photography, so Um,
Oh yeah. Did you take a photo of it then? We should have done that too. We should have done
oh yeah.
a pixel art version and a photo version so that we could each, have our advantage.
Okay, let's see. So I'm going to share the screen of my. I have it open on Sprite right now.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
perfect.
If anyone didn't catch it, our prompt was magical Nintendo Switch. So we had to make a character out of that. So let's see. How do I share this? So okay. Can you see my screen?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
Oh, cool.
basically, yeah.
It's like a Nintendo Switch genie.
Yeah, okay. I wanted to
Yeah.
see if you can. I wanted to see if it was obvious
Yeah,
what it
yeah.
was. So.
No, he's like being conjured out of the console, and then you got the different the buttons. Yeah, that's really
Yeah,
cool.
I use your method of how how you have that scale and you put like like however tall it is and stuff.
Yeah,
I decided to use your strategy for that.
cool. I like that. Yeah, it's like easy just to see if someone's like, "Hey, how big is that?" There you
Yeah,
go, right
definitely.
there. Yeah, yeah. I like the Joy-Con arms too.
Right.
It's really cool. Yeah.
Funny story. I actually didn't have that at first. At first, I just had like some red and blue like wristbands or something. But
Right.
then I realized, oh wait, I didn't take that many aspects from the Switch, so I made the hands like that too.
Yeah, yeah. I like it. Yeah. Do you picture him like he sort of grants wishes, Nintendo Switch wishes or something? I don't know
Yeah,
how that.
definitely. Also, I don't know if you can tell. I try, the plus button.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I tried making the plus right here, but can you tell it's a
Oh
plus or
yeah.
no?
So that's like mustache, goatee, and a little bit of hair is the plus sign, and then his eyes are the.
Oh, the eyes are just the colors, but
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, I see that.
and then I wanted to float something around on the side, so I put like the buttons.
Yeah,
At
yeah.
first, I had A, B, C, D, and then someone pointed out to me like, "Don't you mean X and Y?" So
Yeah.
I had to change that.
Yeah, yeah, usually good with ABXY I always remember, but like the position of them I always
Oh,
forget
right.
because it's obviously different between like Xbox and Nintendo stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Also, look, I struggled right here. Do you see the jaggies here? Y- Kind of.
Oh yeah, do you have there's like a
Pixel
a
perfect.
darker gray along there that's kind of the same as the background
Oh,
that's on
yeah,
here?
right
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
But I think right here, it goes from like two to like one, and then it goes out even two again or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
I couldn't. I didn't know how to solve that. I tried different things, but
Oh, yeah, normally what I find works really well is to just like sometimes you can like square off that entire edge and then carve away from it rather than trying to like
mm,
build it up and then you end up like building up so much that you're like, oh, I added too much or whatever. Um, but yeah, normally like you want to look at the at like how much negative space there is next to those pixels. Do you know what I mean?
no. What do you mean?
Oh, like so if you zoom in on that corner, I'm
Okay,
pointing at the
yeah.
screen like you can see what I'm
This
that
part?
corner just down and to the right. Yeah, the edge of that
Oh,
corner
here.
there is like 2 by 2 pixels,
Right.
right?
Here, maybe I can
And
just
then
like. Oh wait, no. I want this color. There.
yeah, there you go. So like and then on the strip along the very bottom, if you
Oh,
added
this one
another
here.
dark one next to it, yeah, see how now
There
the
we go.
curve is
Wow.
like it kind of gives it a more natural rounding.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, you just
Anyway,
fixed the
sorry, we
whole.
didn't
You
we
fixed
didn't
the
need to
whole
turn
arc.
this into a critique. Yeah,
Nice.
but since you asked, yeah, yeah, I like
Cool.
the musculature too. Like you nailed the sort of like triangular, volume to him
Yeah,
is nice.
I honestly like because like I study like medicine and stuff, but I don't know, just nailing like the anatomy was a little bit more difficult. I feel
Yeah. Well, then I don't think I've ever made a genie either, so I don't know like what the artistic decisions that go into that are, but I imagine it's tough to be like, where do you taper them off? Like, what's going on between the body and like the genie tail portion, right?
yeah. All right, you want to share yours?
Yeah.
So you don't have the
Um,
share you don't have the share screen?
yeah. It said it's disabled. Is that something you have control
Let me
over as a
take a look.
host? I could also email it to you because it is an animation. So
Okay.
if it's going to be laggy, uh, it might
Sure.
as
If
well
you
at
can,
least be good on your end.
you can
Yeah,
send that. You want to send that real quick,
yeah.
and then I'll pull it up on my screen. All right. So I'm gonna open up Brandon's. Let's see. I think I do Command Y. Oh wait, I got to screen share this. All right. I'm sharing our screen now. And how does it look on your end? Does the screen look weird or?
Yeah, no, it
Okay.
honestly looks like it's like just open on my own.
Here we go.
Oh.
Wow. What? Whoa. Wow.
Yeah, and
And it
then
loops like that?
it
Wow,
just
that's
loops from
cool.
there. Yeah. Yeah. So I was like, pretty
That's
much as soon
cool.
as you sent the prompt, I was like, I I just had the idea of like immediately making the two Joy Cons into their own character. And
Mm.
then I was like, what could the middle part be though? Because it can't, I don't know if it could just be like a bigger character or it should be some kind of object that they use. So yeah, that was kind of the
This
idea
is
of
neat.
like these little witches, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
How did you like come up with this?
It was just the idea of like of needing to use those three parts, like the two Joy Cons and the middle, and them being characters that are using this object. And then I was like, well, what are they doing though? Like, there's got to be something. There's got to be some reason why these things exist, right? It
Yeah,
can't just be like two characters with an object. So yeah, so I thought I'd like tie it together with like this gaming idea of them. I kind of pictured it as
I like that.
like sort of a weird Legend of
Razor
Zelda
blades.
thing or something where they're like these magical, this magical offering of you know, life and
Got life and then one up and then
yeah,
what
some
is that
kind
one?
of gem.
Diamond?
It's yeah, it's just like a gem.
Nice.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
and
the hardest thing
here's the
was
sponsor
like I was
logo.
like, oh, this has got to be animated because oh yeah,
For everyone that doesn't know what I'm talking about, when I mentioned it earlier, this is the his mascot.
yeah, that's the spooky negative version of him.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay,
Man, thanks
it's
for
on my
the
screen
prompt
again.
too. Yeah, I think it really helps like to have the mix of the two words that we did, so that you can draw some connection between them.
Right. Yeah, I like that. That's a
Yeah,
good idea.
like if it was just Nintendo Switch, I'd be like, there's
Yeah. Is
no
it?
way that I would have come up with this, right? I'd just be like, well, here's I guess a really good pixel art version of a Nintendo Switch, and we'd be like, okay.
Yeah. Because it kind of
But
like
when you say,
leads your imagination a little bit, you know, like gives
yeah,
you a little bit of like,
exactly.
okay, then I can do this with that, you know, like
Yeah, because you have that puzzle to solve already of like magical Nintendo Switch. Like what does that mean to me? Like what's magical about it? What does it do? How is
yeah.
it going to be a character even, you know? So
What were the other prompts again? Carnivorous plant, right, or something like that. Or no, fruit. It was
there was
fruit,
the other one that I liked was gentlemanly dinosaur, I think
right?
was one. I like gentlemanly as a as like an adjective. So that should come up another time. But I couldn't like for gentlemanly dinosaur, I couldn't not just picture like like a T-Rex with like a top
A
hat and a
top hat and a
monocle.
monocle,
Yeah,
and
like and that's the most like obvious like sort of
yeah.
like so I couldn't like think past that. There's got to be something else to it, but I think
I
that's the
was
most
thinking, oh,
obvious.
that
Like
was the same thing that came to my mind when I read that. I'm like, oh, I'll just switch the dinosaur so it's not like repetitive.
right.
I'll do like a triceratops or something instead of
Yeah,
a.
yeah. Be interesting if we ended up with gentlemanly Nintendo Switch. I don't know how that
That'd be pretty
would
interesting.
it probably still mine would just be you'd have a top hat and a monocle and be like, I don't know, I can't I can't get past it.
There's so many possibilities, and that's what's super cool about Pixar.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, dude, we've almost been on this for an hour.
Yeah,
See
see,
what
it's
I
like you
mean?
said, like, yeah, yeah.
All right. Did you want to offer any last points before we wrap up,
um
or any last tips for people? Or what about, let's just say after watching this, someone that hasn't done pixel art before wants to like try it now because they've been inspired. Like, what would you?
yeah. Um I guess it's one of those things that's maybe a little intimidating because sometimes you're like, I don't even know how to start that. Like
All right.
do I need a special program or this or that? So I do have a video on my channel, like talking about different pixel art software. There's actually a lot of software out there that you can make pixel art in. So that's what makes it hard too, is like if you just search for pixel art programs, you'll probably find like over 20 of them online.
Oh,
So, which maybe that's not a bad thing. You could probably just pick any one. And like I always say, like you're just putting squares onto a canvas. So to do that it doesn't take a lot. Like it's easy to find a program that will allow you to do that. But if you're already comfortable with something, if you happen to have Photoshop or whatever, you can do it in that program. So yeah, I would say like, search for the program. There's lots of free stuff online. And then presumably if someone is interested in pixel art, they already have a little bit of a appreciation for it. Maybe they've looked at games or, other artists posting stuff like that. So I'd say just try to take in as much of that reference as possible. And then really just like think about the sorts of restrictions that you might want to put in place. Like I said, like it's good to start with a lot of stuff that's like very restricted. So that's why, just as a jumping off point, I usually reference a lot of stuff like the Game Boy or whatever, where it's got like 4 colors and a really small canvas size, or even just doing like little icons is a pretty fun exercise.
oh, true.
So yeah, so there's a lot of like little mini projects you can give yourself to kind of get started, and taking in lots of references outside of that definitely helps.
Yeah, I definitely encourage you guys to try out pixel art if you haven't before. It's actually pretty cool. It's like, I don't know, like you might, I don't know, like you might not be familiar with it, but I think just get started on it and then it will be really fun.
Yeah, I find it very like relaxing. I don't know. Sometimes it doesn't even feel like I'm like creating or drawing something in the typical sense. It's more just like doing a puzzle, is usually
Yeah.
what I always say. Like it's just sort of like this mental activity in a way. But then it also, you can bring your own creativity to it. So
Right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in today. And thanks, Brandon, for coming on our show today.
yeah, thanks so
Pleasure to
much.
have you.
Thank you.
Everyone, well, see you guys in the next episode.